Use your powers for evil.
Evil? Your evil is my good. I am Sutekh the Destroyer. Where I tread, I leave nothing but dust and darkness. I find that good.
And one true name forevermore is Sutekh.
I cast you into the time vortex. I sent you forward.
Instead, I found a home. I clung to your infernal machine.
What happens if you bring death to death? You bring life! Bring death to death! Everywhere!
Hello and welcome back to the History of series. In today's video we'll be looking at one of the most powerful beings in the universe that, after many decades, has recently returned. Sutekh the Destroyer. Who is he? Where does he come from? And what are his motivations for such destruction? Well, without further ado, let's find out. Like in the Egyptian myths on Earth, Sutekh was the son of Geb, having been bred alongside Osiris, later reincarnated as Horus, to channel the power of Ra. He was the husband of Nephthys, who was also his and Horus's sister. Sutekh became head of security for the Osirian court, being its most fearsome and powerful warrior, the second and greatest of the three divine shields, who protected the sentient sun Ra from such threats as the serpents created by the Great Houses, such as Epep. He eventually intimidated the Great Houses into making peace by releasing a vampiric army of Malacaths, descendants of the Iskoroth great vampires on the medieval Mediterranean basin, making a credible claim to being able to majorly upset the web of time. After they had served his purpose, he left his Malacath army behind. The Ninth Doctor believed that Osirians, including Sutekh, had taken part in the ancient war which led to the destruction of the Osirians, alongside many other powers such as the demons, Utoparians, and the Time Lords. Jealous that Osiris's accomplishments civilizing 660 worlds were being celebrated more than his own, Sutekh killed him, believing that he deserved to take over the throne of the court, since it owed its own survival to him. He made himself even more powerful than his fellow Osirians, taming the forces of the outer desert, of which even Ra was afraid of, and making a bargain with the Kotura, who allowed him to carry their gift of death himself. He also became the king of the Pantheon, a group of powers beyond the universe. After Osiris was resurrected as Horus in the body of cousin Eliza, Sutekh declared a time war against Horus for the Osirian throne. As recalled by the Fourth Doctor, Sutekh destroyed his home planet, Phaestor Osiris, and subsequently left a trail of havoc across half the galaxy. During this time, he was called by many names on every civilized world, including the Typhonian Beast, Set, Sadok, and Satan. Among the planets where Sutekh and the Osirians fought was Ukali. The two armies fought a great battle in Egypt, and at the end, Sutekh found his traitorous wife Nephthys and a heavily wounded Horus in the Temple of Geb. Horus, or Eliza pretending to be Horus, begged Sutekh to finish the battle, complaining about being tired of fighting and Sutekh's boringness. Angered, Sutekh ripped out his heart. Elated at killing his opponent and winning the contest, Sutekh told Nephthys that he planned to erase Horus's name from the universe. However, she claimed that Faction Paradox would always remember and resist Sutekh's claim to the throne. Though cousin Justine had gone into hiding, Sutekh read from Nephthys' mind that the faction had allies in the 18th century. On the 16th of October, 1764, Sutekh forced John Peniton to direct the Society of Sigismondo di Rimini to declare war on Faction Paradox and seek out its members. Though the Society had no trace of Justine by the 8th of November, Sutekh felt an intrusion in Voltano. There he found Abelard Finton, who he tortured ruthlessly until he divulged that the time ship was in the Mediterranean Sea, and Justine had returned to the Osirian court. Sutekh then brought Finton to Peniton and released them both from his control. Finton died shortly thereafter. Going to the Mediterranean, Sutekh found not Justine's timeship, but the barge of Geb, who was investigating Corwin Marn's claim that Sutekh had left for Earth. When confronted, Geb said that he found Sutekh's body on Mars, barely alive, and buried him in a pyramid while a proper prison was built. Angry and outraged, Sutekh attacked Geb and dumped him in his temple, just in time to watch an earlier version of Sutekh kill Horus. Above the Osirian court, Sutekh confronted the simulacrum copy of Justine, accompanied by an earlier version of Finton within the ship of 1 billion years. This simulacrum had been trained to resist Sutekh's mind control, and when he opened a direct channel between their minds during his attack, she lashed out with her shadow weapon, revealing herself to be the real Justine, hidden behind a bioscreen built by Anubis. The ensuing duel saw the two wrestling in the oxidized dirt of Mars, knocking the very world from its temporal foundations, making it uncertain. This caused the existence of Mars's native ice warriors, who had been worshipping the Osirians as gods, to be reduced to a state of flux forever after. They existed one moment and did not the next, as Gustav explained. Ultimately, Horus succeeded in severing some of Sutekh's neural connections, dumped him on Mars, and called Geb to tell him to look there. At Sutekh's funeral, almost the entire Osirian court came to pay its respects. Justine and Horus agreed to tell the court that Sutekh had been cornered on Earth by Horus's 700 and some fellow warriors. This version of events was repeated in the official records, the legends of Earth, and throughout the galaxy. However, Sutekh would later be discovered imprisoned on Earth, not Mars. Instead, only the Eye of Horus was kept on Mars to send a signal that maintained Sutekh's prison. Indeed, Sutekh himself would remember facing 740 Osirians, led by his brother, as a real event. The Fourth Doctor repeated this claim to Sarah Jane Smith, saying that 740 Osirians, led by Horus, had cornered and defeated Sutekh on Earth. Sarah recognised the name from the 740 gods recorded in the tomb of Thutmose III. As both the Doctor and Professor Marcus Scarman would later discover, Sutekh was entombed but alive in a pyramid in Saqqara, Egypt. The Doctor claimed that Horus left Sutekh in the tomb for 7,000 years by 1911. The Eye of Horus on Mars beamed a signal to suppress Sutekh's power and hold him prisoner. The tales of the Osirians were remembered in Egyptian mythology. Sutekh still retained a cult of followers, such as Ibrahim Namin. After his imprisonment, he had taken on the name of the Red God, and was recognised, though reviled, in the cults of ancient Egypt as a god of evil. The legend of Sutekh passed down through generations of worshippers of Horus, who claimed that Sutekh's worshippers were invariably dissolute of heart, and that they could be recognised by the reddening of the whites in their eyes. In 1903, after receiving a wealth of information from the future, Grigory Rasputin foresaw, among other things, the coming of an Egyptian god. In 1911, the archaeologist Professor Marcus Scarman excavated the inner chamber of the pyramid beneath which Sutekh was imprisoned, discovering Sutekh and thereby accidentally allowing him a chance of escape. Sutekh controlled Scarman's corpse, using it and Osirian service robots to construct an Osirian war missile in an English priory, aimed at the Eye of Horus on Mars. The Fourth Doctor and Sarah were able to destroy the missile, but the Doctor fell under the psychic control of Sutekh's will as a result. He was made to take Scarman and the robots to Mars in his TARDIS. Despite the Doctor's attempt to stop them, Scarman destroyed the Eye and freed Sutekh. Hurrying back to Earth, the Doctor defeated Sutekh by delaying his trip in a time corridor to the Priory, by moving the corridor's threshold to the far future, thus effectively aging him to death. The Doctor thought he would have lived for 700,000 years before succumbing. According to one account, Sutekh escaped physical death by stepping sideways out of the universe, into the void where he would wait until the 10th Doctor's lifetime. According to another set of accounts, Sutekh's body was destroyed, but his consciousness survived, and he rebuilt himself a body using an Osirian loom, returning much faster to plague the 4th and the 7th Doctor. A later account picked up a Sutekh who had already battled one of the gods of time at least once. Adrift in space without a body, he noted that this was not the first time. This account showed Sutekh being pulled into the realm of Netakert, and granted a new body by Nephthys, his sister wife, with the assent of the other Osirians in exchange for him acting as their agent. Yet another account suggested that Sutekh attached himself to the Doctor's TARDIS in flight through the Vortex soon after the 4th Doctor banished him, riding along until the 15th Doctor's era, although he was briefly banished to the Howling Void before braving his way back. Several other accounts showed Sutekh escape Mars and travel back in time to the reign of Hatshepsut, intending to coerce Thutmose to usurp his mother's throne and start his reign of terror on the world. He thought he had destroyed the world by the time of the 21st century, which surprised Russell Cortland, who had predicted it. He went across the earth devouring in his wake, but left his worshippers till last. The Seventh Doctor tricked him by showing him the solar flare-ravaged earth in the 29th century. He went back in time to start over again, and created an Ouroboros loop. After escaping the Ouroboros loop, Sutekh later encountered the Fourth Doctor and Leela on the planet Drummond. Sutekh was using the Rennie.net to control the populace to kill the Doctor, and to transform Drummond into the new home of the Osirians. Finding himself drifting in space without a body, Sutekh reflected on his failure, but found himself mentally contacted by Nephthys, whose voice guided him back to Netta Karet, the land of the dead. There he found himself re-embodied for the first time in millennia. She explained that she had been granted permission to save him by the other gods of Osiris' court, including Osiris himself. As she berated him for having gone insane and forgetting his place, he guessed that the gods had brought him back not out of kindness, but because they needed him to kill something. Nephthys confirmed this, explaining that the court had learned of the survival of the demon Azag, long thought defeated, who had become god and ruler of Cowlathea. Sutekh's mind was then sent into that of Brunta-Tukash, a general of the resistance on the planet Lakos, one of the planets in the dominion of the Cowlathea Empire, who was about to be burned as a heretic by the Cowlathea occupation force. Speaking into his mind on the pyre, Sutekh soon orientated himself, and, channeling his power into Tukasha's body, allowed him to free himself from his bonds. Ignoring Tukasha's protest that mercy was a virtue on which the Lakosians prided themselves, Sutekh slaughtered the Cowlathea, and then galvanized the other Lakosians to fight savagely against their oppressors. Even after the Cowlathea surrendered and were made to retreat from the planet, Sutekh forced Tukash to order them all executed, and commanded the Lakosians to dedicate their sacrifice in the name of Sutekh. The power of these deaths was enough to allow Sutekh to free himself from Tukasha's body and manifest his true form. Despairing of what he had done while Sutekh was within him, Tukash asked the god to kill him, but Sutekh declined. With Brunta-Tukash at his side, Sutekh took command of a Lakosian space fleet, launching an all-out war against the Cowlathea. The first planet they attacked was Maheen, where, at Brunta's suggestion, they worked to liberate the native Maheens rather than simply kill as many Cowlathea as possible, with Sutekh reluctantly acknowledging the wisdom in the strategy, which would allow the Lakosian Resistance Army's forces to grow exponentially. Meanwhile, learning of Sutekh's involvement, Azag ordered the Cowlathea's emperor to fake a surrender. As a result, as he travelled liberating world after world, Sutekh found no significant opposition. He grew increasingly irritated to be covered in praise and worship, born of love rather than fear, and, eager to face the Cowlathea as soon as possible, attacked the Kahedra star system where he guessed their forces might be amassed. There he slaughtered the Cowlathea Empire, before ordering the Lakosian fleet to head to Cowal itself, while Sutekh travelled in a smaller ship to the ice moon of Keb, Azag's hiding place, with only a small retinue of Lakosians, including Tukash. Azag pointing out to Sutekh that, as a father to billions who reaped worship made of love, Nephthys had in fact tricked him into becoming a true god, the very kind deity he wished not to be, in the hope that it would change him. Azag was not content to humiliate Sutekh thus, however, revealing a trap of his own. He had made his lair within Caib because it contained an ancient weapon there left by another race of gods, the Time Lords, capable of wiping out an entire galaxy. Before Sutekh could react, he activated it, destroying in 1 second not just Sutekh's own body, but the untold billions who now worshipped him. Though he did not love them as Nephthys hoped he would, he still felt that these followers belonged to him, and was plunged into a deep despair at his failure to salvage them. However, Sutekh was surprised to awake once again in a new body with paler fur, and face to face with Nephthys. While she had been instructed by Osiris to drag him back to Netta Karet as a prisoner, she disobeyed, instead granting Sutekh a new body and taking him to Nephesta Deneb, a planet in the early universe where a temple to their pantheon stood. It was there, she explained, that the other gods had hidden Sutekh's Sa, which they had extracted from him to weaken him. She intended to return it to him, but they discovered that the amulet containing it had been stolen from the temple long ago by the Eltrala. According to yet another series of accounts, Sutekh survived his original encounter with the Fourth Doctor by stepping sideways at the last moment, remaining trapped in a kind of limbo state within the void, alive and unaging, but once more unable to move, let alone leave. However, a fragment of Sutekh's mind, whom he had planted in the biodata of his son Anubis before his imprisonment, managed to take over Anubis's body and put into motion a plan to free Sutekh and remerge with him to recover his original body. While in the void, Sutekh struck reluctant bargains with many of the other horrors banished there to have them follow him into Endspace, to which, being a native of it, he was still more tethered than they. After re-emerging back into the universe through the Circle of Transcendence, Sutekh spent some time hunting down 2 of the abominations with whom he had bargained. He destroyed the King Nocturnal together and cast the Destroyer back into the Circle, in truth expecting the 10th Doctor, who was present on the Shining Horizon when Sutekh re-emerged, to try and reverse the dimensional conduits to suck Sutekh back into the void. Sutekh had deliberately plugged the Circle with the biomass of the Destroyer. Hence, when the Doctor tried to spring his trap, Sutekh redirected the energy towards himself, using it to rejuvenate his physical form. Draining some of Anubis's psyche to stabilize the result, Sutekh merged back with Anubek and returned to his full power. However, before he could destroy the Doctor, the Time Lord addressed the other released gods, who included the gods of Ragnarok and the Dragon. He pointed out how Sutekh had already betrayed 2 of the deities he had bargained with in the Void, also noting that so long as they existed in the physical realm, the gods counted as life, and were thus the natural enemies of Sutekh. In the end, Dorothy Bell herself revealed her identity as the mortal incarnation of his own Hand of Sutekh to him. She used her abilities as the Hand to partially merge with him, trapping him in her embrace, and then pulled him back into the Void with her, giving up her own freedom for the universe and to save the Doctor from making this sacrifice in her place. One set of accounts held that, when the 4th Doctor vanished him into the time vortex, Sutekh instead latched himself to the Doctor's TARDIS in flight through the vortex. Harriet Arvinger would also later claim he had been banished into the Howling Void, where he braced his way through the darkness and pain until he latched onto the TARDIS. Over time, as he was pummeled with the energies of the vortex, Sutekh evolved, becoming stronger and larger than before until he became a Titan, with Sutekh later claiming that he had evolved into his true godhood. Waiting patiently for the right time to strike, he became known as the One Who Waits to his fellow Pantheon of Discord members. While the Doctor remained unaware of Sutekh, a groaning similar to that heard when he projected his mind into the TARDIS previously was heard several times from the 14th to the 15th Doctor's travels. Furthermore, Sutekh exploited the TARDIS's perception filter to spread variations of a hidden Angel of Death to every time and place the TARDIS landed since his first initial encounter with the Doctor. After many hundreds of years travelling through time and space, Sutekh had created enough versions of the Angel to eliminate all life, including the remaining regions of existence where the TARDIS had not yet landed. By 2024, the Angel had become strong enough on Earth to manifest as Susan Triad, whose tech company in the 21st century contained a clue to her true origins. The company name, Susan Triad Technology, could be shortened to Sutekh. Sutekh also aimed to deceive the Doctor by naming Susan after Susan Foreman, the Doctor's granddaughter, while giving her the initials of S Triad, an anagram of TARDIS. When the Toymaker managed to escape into Endspace, he found the One Who Waits hiding. Whilst he had bested the Guardians of Time and Space, the Dying, Spy Master, and God, he opted to flee rather than challenge the One Who Waits to a game. He later told the 14th Doctor of his decision to flee from the One Who Waits, and chose not to spoil the surprise, cryptically telling the Doctor that it was someone else's game. In his novelisation of the battle with the Doctor, the Toymaker promised the Doctor's inevitable encounter with the One Who Waits would be novelised as Doctor Who and the I'm Not Going to Tell You. In 2024, after the 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunder returned to Unit HQ, intending to discover the identity of a mysterious woman following them throughout time and space, as well as that of Ruby's mother, Kate Stewart informed them that the woman was known here as Susan Triad, a tech billionaire. Frustrated by the identity of Ruby's mother being shrouded to even him, Sutekh finally revealed himself through his harbinger, Harriet Arvinger, who had infiltrated UNIT as an archivist. He was uncloaked and revealed in his new form of a gigantic hound, sitting atop the TARDIS. Simultaneously, Susan Triad became aware of her true identity, and mocked the Doctor for having believed she may have been his granddaughter, and announced that Sutekh would destroy the entire universe. Sutekh's angels now activated, and spread his dust of death as a gift to all life throughout the web of time. However, the Doctor realised he was being spared, as Sutekh still wished to discover the mystery of Ruby's mother, allowing them to escape in a memory TARDIS. Eventually, the Doctor, Ruby and Melanie Bush managed to track her identity using a complete DNA database of every UK citizen in 2046, a scheme put in place by the fascistic Prime Minister Roger ap Gwilym. Sutekh remotely possessed and killed Mel, using her to spy on and apprehend the other two. Returning to Unit HQ, the Doctor and Ruby got close to Sutekh by using the lure of her mother's name on a monitor, which Ruby promptly dropped, causing it to shatter, before leashing Sutekh to the TARDIS and dragging him off into the time vortex. The Doctor theorised that bringing Sutekh's touch of death to the death of the universe would create life, which was correct, and every time zone Sutekh touched through the walls of the vortex reversed everything he had done. Once his work was finished, the Doctor somberly cut the lifeline securing Sutekh to the TARDIS, causing him to lose protection within the vortex and disintegrate. And that is the story of Sutekh the Destroyer, one that on screen took nearly 50 years to come to a close, but did so spectacularly, though not without raising many questions along the way. While the god of death may have been regarded as the most powerful of the pantheon, this is perhaps only because he was not bound by rules like the others. The Toymaker could shape reality to his will, but was cursed with an unscratchable itch to play games and abide by the rules of them. The Maestro was similar in terms of power, but entirely depended on music, or lack thereof after removing it from history, for their powers to work. The Trickster could derail history with only a single action, but required the consent of an individual to do so, greatly limiting his powers. Sutekh really had no such written, concrete rules or limits. The only real limit to his powers was self-imposed. Patience. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then consider leaving a like and subscribing down below. If you're new here, then consider checking out some of my other entries to the History of series. You never know what you might find. But, as always, thanks for watching.